For more than 4 decades, a silent traveler has been moving through the darkest regions of space, far beyond the reach of planets, beyond the warmth of the sun, into a place where light itself begins to lose meaning. It does not choose its path. It does not change direction. It simply continues forward, carried by momentum from a time when humanity first dared to reach beyond its own world. There are no engines guiding it now. No hands controlling it. Only the quiet laws of physics pushing it deeper into the unknown. At some point in its journey, something changed. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. But enough to be noticed. The space around it began to behave differently. For years, it had traveled inside a vast invisible bubble created by the sun. A region where solar energy dominates everything, where charged particles stream outward, shaping the environment around them. But slowly, that influence began to fade. The particles grew weaker. The magnetic patterns shifted. The familiar signature of our star started to disappear. And then, it was gone. The spacecraft had crossed into a region no human object had ever reached before. Interstellar space. A place often imagined as empty. Silent. Lifeless. But what it found was something else entirely. Because space is not truly empty. It is filled with traces. Faint energy. Thin plasma. Invisible waves moving across distances so vast they cannot be fully understood. And within that silence, there are signals. Not messages. Not voices. But patterns. Subtle vibrations passing through the fabric of space itself, like ripples spreading across an endless ocean. Some of these waves began their journey millions of years ago. Long before Earth formed. Long before the sun even existed. They're echoes of violent events. Stars collapsing. Explosions tearing matter apart. Forces so powerful they reshape entire regions of the galaxy. And now, those ancient disturbances are still moving. Still traveling. Still carrying information about a past no one has ever seen. The spacecraft does not understand what it is detecting. It only records. It listens. It sends. Every piece of data it transmits takes nearly an entire day to reach Earth. Traveling at the speed of light, across billions of kilometers, growing weaker with every passing year. Its power is fading. Its systems are aging. One by one, instruments are being turned off, not because they failed, but because there is no longer enough energy to keep them alive. And yet, it continues. Still sending signals. Still whispering across the void. Still telling us what lies beyond the boundary of our existence. Attached to its structure is something unusual. Not a scientific instrument. Not a sensor. But a message. A record of a world it will never see again. Sounds of wind moving across land. Waves touching a distant shore. Voices speaking in languages from a small blue planet. Music created by minds that once looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. It is not waiting for a reply. It was never meant to. It is simply a statement. Proof that, at one point in time, somewhere in the galaxy, intelligence existed. And it chose to reach outward. As the spacecraft drifts farther away, it is slowly becoming something else. Not just a machine. Not just a mission. But a fragment of history, a moving memory. Long after its systems go silent, it will continue traveling. For thousands of years. Then millions. Passing through regions of space no human will ever witness. Outliving everything that created it. Civilizations may rise and fall. Planets may change. Even the night sky itself will not look the same. But this small object will remain silent, endless, unstoppable, carrying with it a story that may never be heard. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, for decades, the spacecraft has been listening. Not searching. Not expecting. Just recording whatever the universe allows it to hear. Most of what it detects is predictable. Radiation bursts. Cosmic noise. Random fluctuations in plasma drifting between the stars. But then, something appears that doesn't behave like noise. At first, it is almost nothing. A faint variation. A tiny disturbance hidden inside a much larger signal. So small it could be ignored. But it repeats. Not constantly. Not regularly. But enough to raise a question. Because in space, randomness rarely repeats in the same way twice. The signal does. It arrives, fades, then returns again from a slightly different direction. The onboard systems do not recognize it as anything important. There is no program designed to search for patterns like this. No instruction that says, this could be something else. So the spacecraft does what it has always done. It records, compresses, transmits. Across billions of kilometers, the data travels back to Earth. Weak, fragmented, delayed. When it finally arrives, it doesn't look unusual. At least, not at first. Buried inside hours of standard readings, scientists begin to notice something strange. A structure. Not a message. But not random either. The signal carries spacing. Intervals that seem intentional. Like pulses that almost form a rhythm but never fully repeat the same way. Too organized to be natural. Too inconsistent to be artificial. It exists in between. At first, it is dismissed. Space is full of unknown behaviors. Magnetic turbulence. Interstellar shocks. Unstable particle flows. There are explanations. There are always explanations. But then the signal changes. Very slightly. Not in strength. Not in frequency. But in timing. The intervals begin to shift. As if something is adjusting. Not broadcasting, but reacting. And that is when the question becomes unavoidable. What if this isn't just a signal moving through space? What if it's something aware of movement within it? Because the spacecraft is not standing still. It is traveling. Moving deeper into interstellar space, crossing invisible regions shaped by forces we do not fully understand. And with every million kilometers it moves, the signal changes with it. Not following. Not chasing. But aligning. As if the space around it is not empty, but structured. Layered. Responsive. Engineers check the systems. No malfunction. No interference from Earth. No known source that could create this kind of pattern at such a distance. And yet, it continues. The pulses grow clearer. Still faint. Still subtle. But no longer dismissible. Some begin to consider a possibility that had always existed, but was never expected to be taken seriously. Not a transmission. Not a call. But a byproduct of something much larger. A system. Something embedded within interstellar space itself. Not built. Not placed. But existing. Ancient. Widespread. Possibly older than our solar system. The spacecraft keeps moving. And the signal keeps changing. Until one transmission arrives, that is different from all the others. For the first time, the pattern stabilizes. Not random. Not shifting. Clear. Defined. Measurable. It holds for just a few seconds. Then disappears completely. No fade. No distortion. Just gone. As if something realized it had been detected. And chose to stop. Since then, the signal has never appeared again. The spacecraft continues its journey. Still sending data. Still drifting deeper into the unknown. But whatever that pattern was, it is no longer there. Which leaves only one possibility that is harder to ignore than any explanation before it. It was never random. It was never noise. And it may not have been meant for us. It may have been triggered by the presence of something that wasn't supposed to be there. A small, silent machine, carrying the signature of a distant world, moving through a region of space that might not be as empty as we once believed. And somewhere far ahead,